Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this event today, featuring distinguished scholars and panelists. All of our panelists volunteered their time and their expertise, so I want to begin by thanking them in advance for their stellar contributions that they will share with us today. And much thanks to all of you for joining us over the next 2 days. The purpose of this event is to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library and the Vernon E. Jordan Jr. Law Library at Howard University. We'll be conducting 2 half-day symposiums focusing on challenges and legal implications of miscommunication and misinformation, I should say, in health disparities and health policies that affect minority groups in the United States. That's a lot, but we've got a lot to deal with today. That again is challenges and legal implications of misinformation and health disparities and health policies that affect minority groups in the United States. I'm Dr. Sheila Brooks. I'm founder, president, and CEO of SRB Communications. We're a full-service multicultural advertising, marketing, and public relations firm in Washington, D.C. And simply put, what we do is we help our clients nationally build brand awareness for all of their programs and initiatives. For more than 31 years, our award-winning boutique agency creates and executes public education and outreach campaigns. Now, my background is television news and communications, but I'll tell you, I'm most proud that my education comes from Howard University, where I received my master's degree in political science and a Ph.D. in communication, culture, and media studies from the Cathy Hughes School of Communications. And that was just a short 6 years ago. Let's start our program. 6 years ago, also at the same time I was graduating from Howard University, President Wayne Frederick appointed Dr. Anthony K. Wutoh as Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University. Dr. Wutoh previously served as Dean of the College of Pharmacy and Assistant Provost for International Programs at Howard University. Let's hear from Dr. Wutoh now. Dr. Wutoh?
Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to first thank Dr. Brooks for serving alma mater and agreeing to play the role of moderator for this wonderful event. It certainly is an honor and a pleasure for me to bring welcome and greetings on behalf of the entire Howard University community. I've been at Howard University since 1996. And so I was present when the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library was conceived and was constructed. As a matter of fact, the library sits on what formerly was my parking lot when I first joined Howard University. And so it really has been an amazing adventure to watch the library being constructed, to have it become really one of the iconic buildings on Howard University's campus. I also remember having the great honor and distinction of meeting Congressman Stokes, and he would recount stories that he had a model of the library that he would carry with him with great pride and showed it to me on occasion. So I want to also thank Dr. Barnes and her staff at the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library for helping to organize this wonderful event. And I certainly want to thank all of the participants who are taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today. Howard University is one of the 9 institution members of the Washington Regional Library Consortium. The 3 libraries on campus share resources and library space with these consortia members. The Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library supports academic initiatives, research, and patient care to ensure the programming addresses competencies or criteria required by accrediting bodies of our respective schools and colleges. The Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library offers introductions to library resources, supports our residents, utilizes interlibrary loans to obtain requested articles that are not part of our subscription services, provides specialized training, including intermediate and advanced training in skillfully searching PubMed and other pertinent databases. The library also supports our institution to celebrate historic events, such as today's symposium. They have also been instrumental in coordinating the 140th anniversary of the College of Dentistry, and I believe that event will take place this Friday afternoon and Saturday morning. So the Health Sciences Library has really become an integral part of what we do at Howard, specifically for the health professional programs in the College of Medicine, the College of Dentistry, the College of Pharmacy, and the College of Nursing and Allied Health, but really has provided a venue for the entire university community to be able to benefit from, share, and to celebrate. And so again, I want to take this opportunity to thank each of our panelists for volunteering their time to partake in this really momentous event in commemorating the 20th anniversary of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library. At this time, I'm going to introduce a very special guest, Miss Shelley Stokes, the daughter of our namesake, Congressman Louis Stokes. Shelley Stokes-Hammond is the daughter of former Congressman Louis Stokes, the namesake again of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library, whose 20th anniversary we celebrate today. She's a former member of the Howard University family, as she joined the staff of the Howard University Libraries in 1997 after a successful managerial career with Verizon. She retired from Howard in 2015, the same year that her father passed at age 90. For almost 2 decades, Shelley worked at Founders Library as the Development and Public Affairs Unit. In that capacity, she also worked closely with the Health Sciences Library, including producing a beacon of light, a video to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library. In addition to historical research and writing at Howard, she's organized special programs, including the annual Faculty Authors Celebration, which honored Howard University faculty members campus-wide for their scholarly publications on an annual basis for more than a decade. Professionally, Shelley is also a writer, historian, and historic preservationist. She served as a governor appointee to the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture for several years. Several organizations have also published her work, including the Cleveland State University, the White House Historical Association, and the National Alliance for Preservation Commissions. Her most notable work, Recognizing Ludlow, a National Treasure, is the primary source for considering the Ludlow neighborhood of Cleveland and Shaker Heights, Ohio, a national model for integration, as the site for the only African-American civil rights trail in the North. In addition, she currently is writing a memoir about her family's journey from slavery to civil rights. As a board member of the National Coalition for Families and a special legislative committee for the National Alliance of Mental Health, or NAMI, in Montgomery County, Maryland, Shelley advocates for eliminating health disparities for minorities. She is a product of public schools in Cleveland and Shaker Heights, Ohio, and she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in English Composition and Literature from Ohio University. In addition, she's completed graduate studies in writing, editing, and publications at Georgetown University and received her Master of Arts degree in Historic Preservation from Goucher College. She's the mother of 3 sons, Brett, Eric, and Grant Hammond, and she is also the grandmother of 3-year-old Ava Jacqueline Hammond. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Shelley Stokes-Hammond.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wutoh, for that kind introduction. And I would also like to acknowledge our moderator, Dr. Brooks, and all of the speakers for today, Dr. Pearl, Dr. Nunziato, Ms. Chen, and Dr. Ponder. And to Ms. Fatima Barnes, Director of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library, and Mr. Jeremy Guno, the Assistant Director of Operations, thank you both for your hard work in pulling this wonderful program together today. My father, Congressman Louis Stokes, often spoke of his long and close relationship with Howard University, starting with our family. Two of my sisters are alumni of Howard. My sister Angela, who was a retired municipal court judge, is a graduate of the law school. And my sister Lori, who is an anchor, television anchor in New York for the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news and Fox 5, attended the undergraduate program. One of my nieces, Kimberly Stokes, is a more recent graduate, earning her bachelor's and master's degrees, and she is now pursuing her doctorate in Detroit. Kimmy is the daughter of Chuck Stokes, my only brother, my father's only son, who is a moderator and producer of Spotlight on the News and editorial and public affairs director for WXYZ ABC in Detroit. Chuck is a Morehouse man, but our parents, Louis and Jay Stokes, all of their 4 children and their 7 grandchildren, have many, and we cherish many fond memories of our relationship with Howard when my father was alive. I am indeed honored to be here today for this special occasion and to represent my father. I only wish that he could be the one here with you instead of me, because he was so good at letting people know just how special they are and how much he appreciates your contributions. I've been asked to comment briefly on the history of the Health Sciences Library, and then to share just a little bit about my father's role in helping to eliminate health disparities. 20 years ago, the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library opened its doors. It was a great honor in 2001 and an occasion of even greater significance today in 2021. What makes the anniversary of this library such a special occasion? I think the answer lies in the history and the people who have been a part of Howard for the past 160 years. The answer also lies with each of you who carry forward this university's great legacy, and everyone who is still fighting to eliminate health disparities. The story begins with the university's founding. We humbly remember how on November 20th, 1866, 10 members of the First Congregational Society of Washington, D.C., decided to establish the Howard Theological Seminary for the training of African-American preachers. The institution was named after General Oliver Otis Howard, who was one of the top Union officers during the Civil War. He was also the head of the Freedmen's Bureau, which helped to rehabilitate former slaves during the Reconstruction era. Within 2 months, the name of the institution was changed to Howard Normal and Theological Institute for the education of teachers and preachers. And then on March 2nd, 1867, the charter for Howard University was enacted by Congress and subsequently approved by Andrew Johnson. The founders of Howard University planned for a library before instruction began with 4 white female students on May 1st, 1867. A donation of $25, the first book in the collection, which was a copy of Webster's Dictionary, and a promise of another 1,000 books prompted planning for the first library. On April 8th, 1867, the Board of Trustees appointed Danford B. Nichols, Benjamin F. Morris, and Edward Ketchum to a library committee with instruction to select books. A month later, Nichols, who was appointed as librarian, moved his personal library to the building where the university began on Georgia Avenue. Shortly thereafter, the library was established on the 3rd floor of what they called the main building, and that existed on the site where Founders Library is today. The young university grew. However, the library facilities did not. Decade after decade, imagine climbing 3 flights of stairs to the cramped quarters of a room 20 feet long by 25 feet wide, where for want of space, there were piles of books on the floor, and the weight of them was so heavy in the shelves that it threatened the safety of the floor joist. Patrons often found it closed once they finally got there because it was only open for 2 hours a day. And faculty who were teaching were also trying to juggle managing the library. So for the next 45 years, the Howard University Board of Trustee members sought funding for a library building from Congress, but each request was denied. Finally, in 1910, after an intense 7-year campaign during the Thurkild administration, involving the collaboration of Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, Andrew Carnegie donated $50,000 to construct Howard's first library building, which is the Carnegie building that the university still finds precious on its campus today. So the journey continued with students, parents, faculty, administrators ever striving, pushing forward towards excellence in education and health sciences in a myriad of inadequate facilities and with insufficient resources, decade after decade, until at last in 2001, this state-of-the-art facility was built and named in honor of Louis Stokes. So who was Louis Stokes? Some here may have met him. Dr. Wutoh remembers him, and I appreciate your kind memories, Dr. Wutoh. Others may not have much knowledge about him. As an African-American, my father shares heritage with the founding of Howard University. He and his younger brother, Carl Stokes, were the grandsons of former slaves. Their grandfathers were among the freedmen who voted in 1867, the same year that Howard was founded. A century would pass before most African-Americans would vote again. Their mother, my grandmother, Louise Stokes, was a sharecropper and found her way from rural Georgia to Cleveland during the Great Migration around World War I. She met and married my grandfather, Charles Stokes, in Cleveland. Unfortunately, he died at the age of 28 from an illness when my father was 3 and my uncle was 1 year old. So then my grandmother's mother, Fanny Stone, came up from Georgia to Ohio to help my grandmother, who as a widow at that point was trying to raise her sons and provided for the family as a domestic worker. Both my father and his brother became lawyers, but they envisioned law differently as a means for improving our society. In 1967, my Uncle Carl was elected the first Black mayor of a major American city. Newspapers announced the grandson of a slave defeats the grandson of a president. Carl had defeated Seth Taft, the grandson of former President and Supreme Court Justice William Howard Taft. My father loved law more than politics. He felt it had the power for upholding one's constitutional rights. Before being elected to Congress, he had participated in 3 cases that went before the US Supreme Court. One is the landmark case for stop and frisk, Terry versus Ohio. Another resulted in the state of Ohio being ordered by the Supreme Court to redraw its gerrymandered district lines. And then with his younger brother's urging and his younger brother's political machine behind him, my father ran thinking, well, maybe this is another worthy aspect of law. So in 1968, he became the first Black elected to Congress from Ohio. In January 69, he was sworn into the 91st Congress, bringing the total number of Black members to 9. Not since 1870 had there been that many Black representatives in Congress. Today, it's a different world. The CBC celebrates its 50th anniversary. The 117th Congress is the most ethnically diverse ever in the history of our country, with over 124 lawmakers who identify as Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islander, or Native American. My father served 15 terms in the US House of Representatives. He chaired the Intelligence Committee, was a founding member of the CBC, and he led the Ethics Committee as its chair. He was the first Black to serve on the House Appropriations Committee, and he chaired the House investigations into the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King. What was his association with Howard University? On the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the Lewis Stokes Health Sciences Library, I interviewed my father. And I asked him that question. And he said, early on, when I became a member of the Appropriations Committee and was given an opportunity to serve on the Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education Subcommittee on Appropriations, I realized that Howard University received its funding from the United States Congress, and that as a historic university, who the Congress had set aside after the Civil War, special legislation creating it, and special legislation funding it, I realized that sitting on that subcommittee made me responsible for doing whatever I could in carrying out the historic mission of that university. I asked him if there was anything in his personal life that made health matters more important to him. He said, no, I don't think there was anything in particular in my own health or my family's health that gave me a greater interest in health matters. I think it was more that I represented a congressional district in Cleveland, Ohio, which was primarily the inner city of Cleveland, where I had a high concentration of minorities who were poor, who lived in poor housing, whose access to health oftentimes was gained in emergency rooms in the hospitals. And I felt that this was wrong. And we needed to pass legislation to enact legislation that would address these types of inadequacies in our society. He worked to help those Black institutions with healthcare programs. Howard with its medical school, Meharry with its schools of medicine and dentistry, Xavier with its pharmacy school, and Tuskegee with its veterinary school. There were certain persons instrumental in his work for eliminating health disparities. In 1975 or 76, Andy Young approached him on the House floor and introduced him to Dr. Lewis Sullivan, which led to funding for the Morehouse School of Medicine and a relationship that continued until the end of my father's life. When Congressman Perrin Mitchell was chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus somewhere around 1974, he asked my father if he would help to organize health brain trusts so that the caucus would seem like a conscience of America, especially with institutions like NIH. And he stayed as chair of that health brain trust from 74 until 1999. Another very instrumental factor was in 1985, the Heckler Report. The Secretary of Health of what was then Health, Education, and Welfare had done a special task force, and they found that there were in excess of 85,000 deaths in the minority community every year due to disparity in health between Blacks and whites. And he felt with that report, he had the kind of academic study he needed to be able to work with that report and pursuing the kind of health reform that was needed in our country. In 1988, President Bush signed into law a bill that he had passed with the help of Ted Kennedy in the Senate. It was the Disadvantaged Minority Health Improvement Act. As Dr. Wutoh said earlier, my father passed away at the age of 90 in 2015. There are a couple of things that happened that last year of his life that I think might be significant in sharing with you today. That year, in April of 2015, his last trip to Washington was to attend the 30th anniversary of the Heckler Report. In addition, 2 weeks before he passed, he was really happy to find out that Ohio State University Press was going to publish his autobiography, The Gentleman from Ohio. He said in his book, perhaps the most devastating inequality that afflicts the Black and other minority populations is inequality in healthcare. Martin Luther King called it the most shocking and inhumane of all injustices. Years after my father retired, a friend asked him what he was proudest of, and he said, I'm proud of it all, He said, but if one thing stood out in my mind, it was what I had done to further healthcare, particularly minority healthcare. Looking back, I have vivid memories of sitting on committees, considering healthcare legislation, taking testimony and asking questions of people from the health care agencies, institutions like the HHS Secretary, the Surgeon General, the directors of the CDC, and NIH, the chiefs of NIH's various centers and institutes. He said, I would sit there, the only Black on the committee, asking very pointed questions about minority healthcare, thinking all these white people sitting here with me, and I'm the only one who's going to raise these issues. I'd start, and as I did, I'd see the eyes begin to roll. I could hear them thinking, there he goes again. What is he talking about? What does this have to do with anything? That was demeaning, but I had to disregard it. I had to just ignore it. I'd say to myself, no matter how they look at me, just ask what you have to ask and ignore. So I did what I thought I had to do. This went on for years. And it was not comfortable for those sitting on the hot seat answering question after question from this Black man about Black people at a time and in a context where they weren't thinking much about Black people. But it turned out over time that this interaction had consequences. They helped change the way healthcare leaders and directors felt that they had to focus their efforts or at least broaden their thinking. Then the most surprising thing happened at the subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services was considering its last bill that I would be a part of. Just before my retirement, Chairman John Porter said, Lou, the heads of the Institute at NIH want to construct a building named in your honor. It was a total surprise, just as the naming of the Health Science Library at Howard was also a complete surprise. So in closing, I want you to know that my father enjoyed being on the campus of Howard University. On the occasion of the 10th anniversary, he said, as I walk through the library, as I do on occasions, and I see these young people and I think of the future, and I think down the line that someday this young man, this young lady will be some outstanding healthcare professional in the world, giving healthcare and eliminating disparities and making scientific discoveries that perhaps will change the world. One of my father's favorite quotes is by George Bernard Shaw. Life is no brief candle for me. It's a sort of splendid torch which I had got hold of for the moment. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it off to future generations. So thank you, Dr. Wutoh and your administration for your continued support of the library and for my father, especially when it comes to celebrating all the library and its endeavors, and my father's efforts to fight for eliminating health disparities. It's particularly notable in this age of misinformation of healthcare policies. While my father may have played a major role, he is one of many to whom the torch has been passed. The 20th anniversary celebration of the Louis Stokes Health Sciences Library is a tribute to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stokes. It's certainly a pleasure and an honor to have you join us and share not only your reflections, but also some of your father's thoughts. And we are so appreciative of the work that he has done in support of our communities and health disparities, and continue to be honored that he allowed us to grace this beautiful library with his name. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. He would be so grateful. Thank you.
Dr. Brooks, I will turn the program back over to you. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule, and know that we are anticipating our next presenter joining us in a few minutes, but I'll turn the program back over to you at this time.
Thank you so much, Provost. I am so appreciative, Dr. Wutoh. We will have our next speaker joining us shortly, but in the meantime, if you are just joining us for this symposium, let me say good afternoon again. Welcome to the 20th anniversary of the Lewis Stokes Health Sciences Library and the Vernon E. Jordan Law Library at Howard University. Over the next couple of days, we are going to share some insightful health information on focusing on the challenges and legal implications of misinformation in health disparities and health policies that affect minority groups in the United States. I'm Sheila Brooks, CEO of Washington, D.C. marketing agency SRB Communications. I'm delighted to be your moderator today. And while we're waiting on our next speaker to join, let me just share a few housekeeping matters with you. Once we hear from our speaker, we're going to move into our next session after that. It will take us about 5 minutes to move into that session. So if that session finishes earlier, I want all of you to take the time to network, and you could do that networking using the chat box there. Our next session, immediately following our speaker, you will be introduced to the panelists for today. I will introduce all 3 panelists, and immediately following each of them sharing their research and presentations, you should place your questions in the chat. And then you can do that throughout the session as they are giving their presentations. And then we're going to take all the questions at the very end of the presentation after each panelist has presented. We're definitely keeping our event on time, so please join us on time according to your schedule. That session for the panel discussion begins at 2:30. We are still waiting for our next speaker, who is intended to join us about 1:45. So it's about 1:32 right now. We can now just take a break for everyone. You can go into the chat, you can network, and then you can rejoin us in the next session. We look forward to it.